What's up, guys? We're back with a non-series specific video.
Yep.
It's more of a rant. We tried this one time when we went like 2 hours, so we're trying to shorten it out a little bit.
Right,
make it
condense.
more concise, make it so the words that we say make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So the topic for today, as seen in the thumbnail in the video, is what makes a bad ending and why some endings are unsatisfying, especially for dedicated fan bases.
Yeah. So, Michael, you first brought me this question after reading one of your famous Chinese novels.
Yes, I could start a whole channel reviewing Chinese novels.
Which he might, but do you want to elaborate what you were feeling in that specific one and bring up like the first bad ending?
Yeah, so there's two main points that I want to bring out, and it kind of... the second one didn't relate to this specific Chinese light novel, but I'll talk about the first one first that did. So a lot of light novels, Chinese light novels, are very long. They'll be anywhere from, I don't know how many pages, but there'll be a lot of chapters, 1,000, 2,000 chapters, which is maybe like 6,000 pages or more. Hard to really know with translation. But basically how they'll end is they'll have a final battle, sometimes very short, and this last one it was very, very short, and like the end of the series. And then right after that, they'll be made the god of the universe. Like literally, like they created everything, or like they're like no one else is relevant in the story because they're God now. And I think I've really got tired of those endings. Obviously, it becomes very samey if they're the creator of the world now, or if they're unlimited power, they have unlimited power. And I've actually seen it across different shows. There's one series that we've watched. I don't want to talk about because Josh hasn't got to the ending, but there's one series that has a similar ending where they basically become all powerful, and I think it really kind of undoes a lot of the stakes that were established previous. I mean, I like OP characters. One Punch Man is good. It's a comedy. If it was a drama, it'd be a little different, but OP character, everyone loves Superman, the idea of Superman.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Everyone loves like superpowered superhero main characters. I mean, that's like what has been the most popular anime for 20 years. Yeah.
I mean, even
it's always pretty much that.
U.S. Movies, you see that a lot.
But when you get to a point where they're like the creator, then it's like, if I'm not totally related to totally believe in this, but I do believe like if a character doesn't have struggles that are both external and internal, like what's the point of having a story? Right. And I think if they're made all powerful, then really like what's the point of the journey? I mean, I guess it's cool because they're the best of all time, but I never really feel like that's a good ending. Yeah,
and it's really hard to connect, on more than just one level when you have something that's just superficial like that or focuses on one point. I think when you were talking about like OP characters, it made me think a little bit of Ari Freda, and because I read the whole web novel, right? And I liked the ending. I liked the very endings a little, but I like the final battle. But the thing is, though, is that at least when I was first reading it, my first reaction, it's like, man, I'm really liking this in the moment, but also I feel like it's kind of sad because that they're at a point now where the characters are so powerful, right? And they're going up against somebody that's taken so long to build up to, make it believable, but also just entertaining, because they've gone through so many different trials against that guy already. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that once you, know, it's like when they beat this last guy, there's no more, because they can't just, let me rephrase this, right? So if they beat that guy, right? And somebody else just walked in and was like, oh, I'm 10 times more powerful than he is.
It's the Tokyo Ghoul effect.
Yeah, because you, okay, so I'm just supposed to expect that there was another guy that was more powerful than the god of this universe. All right, that makes sense.
It's the Palpatine effect.
Yeah, it just...
I buried Star Destroyers.
Yeah, it's I don't know. That is to the point where I think it's really detrimental in that sense. Another way that I think it can kind of... I don't know if this necessarily falls in line with OP characters, but I noticed this in some series where the premise of the show you started off so simple, and then they wanted to take it into a more meaningful way, like they give them some form of thing to overcome. But then it just, the scope of it becomes too big than what the show originally was, or, whatever franchise it was. And then it's almost boring. or it just doesn't feel like it's the same thing you fell in love with. And I think that's another way that it makes it ultimately become a bad ending.
Yeah, the other one's pretty short and simple. A lot of authors, especially in Chinese light novels, but also in Western comics, can depend on time skips either towards the end or at the very end of their story to kind of like wrap things up. And I think that's lazy story writing in many cases.
Yeah.
And storytelling, and also I don't think time skips never really. I've never been super satisfied with a time skip at the end of a series. If it's going to end it, and that's.
I like to call that move the montage ending, where it's and again, it's more like what you're saying. It's not like we're gonna spend time on each character that you've grown to know, love, and we give them one final say. No, it's more just like through years and years into the future, we just see it go by so fast, and I think that's in a way. It's bad because it just wastes so much potential for the author, because you see some cool ideas, but they're not expanded upon at all. And they kind of go by so fast, you don't really get an impact from them. It's almost like too information at once, to where it's like, whatever. Like, that's cool, but I'll never remember that probably unless I go back and be like, oh yeah, look at this one specific panel that showed this one thing that could have been cool. And, there's a lot of different stories that have done that, especially in Western comics. I think Western comics are the ones that are the worst at it. One that reminds me of is Invincible. I mean, we read that, and that's still today probably my favorite Western comic that I've read start to finish. But that does suffer from one of those endings, and it is just kind of a shame because it didn't really even need to be in there for it to have a good ending. And it's like, oh, I'm glad we wasted any potential of coming back to this series down the road just for that one line that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and I mean, answering all the questions in the story and leaving no mysteries is usually not a way to go for a satisfying ending either.
Yeah, I am not a huge fan of ambiguity. I think that's partially because I'm more of a lore hound. So I like, getting as much details about whatever world is established, especially if it's a more like supernatural or sci-fi one. But there is, and that's not to say it's bad. That's more of a preference, but it is like if you're going for like a bigger, I don't want to say like a deeper meaning type, but like let's say you're weighing some kind of twist and you just kind of either you're like, oh, was it a dream? Was it not? You decide. I really don't like that. I think because it's almost like an excuse to do bad storytelling. It's like, oh, we'll put this in here. Why? I thought it'd be cool. Not that, it really fit into the story, but it's okay. We're not going to tell you if it's real or not. So, you just decide. Yeah. I just want this, I think one that you kind of talked about was rushed endings, just it ending in a blimp. Like they set it up for, 1,000 chapters and then they end the last battle in 2.
Yeah.
That's, I think that's just a satisfying factor, but I guess it's hard. I guess the bottom line is it's hard to write a good ending, so a lot of times it ends up being bad, whether the person was just lazy or they really were trying and they just couldn't. But, and I just exited out of that. That's great. But it's okay. It's back. Anyway, I think the biggest hint for shoehorned twists are like in, I don't know if heist movies fall in there. Maybe they do to an extent. But I think mystery movies do this a lot, where they might have somebody, be the killer just because they're like, oh, nobody would have suspected the grandma in the wheelchair.
It's like, yeah, but that's not the purpose of a mystery. Like, the purpose of a mystery is to watch it back and be like, oh, there were signs that they left in the movie.
Exactly, yeah. And then when you just kind of put this in at the last minute with no setup, it's like, all right, thanks for wasting 2 hours of my life. I guess the bottom line of this video is that there is a lot of bad endings. And there's varying degrees why they could be a bad ending. Because I think, some things could end up being a good ending, but it's all about the execution of it. But does that answer some questions? The original question? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's, you can never have a comprehensive list of bad endings, but I hope this video served as something kind of to have a conversation about endings in general, and talk about what makes a bad ending, what makes a good ending, and it's good to have specific conversations about series that both people have watched and enjoyed, and then you can have something to talk about there.
Yeah, because not only is it like a cool like conversational piece, but it's also, I think, a way for people to be vocal respectively, but also telling these people that are coming up with these, like, hey, do better, be better.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we didn't really talk about is endings, but samey endings can also be very, very bad. So if you're, if you go with the God ending, if you go with time skip into everything is great, there's many issues that people can run into. And the reason why I thought this is so important is because a lot of the series that we love and watch and read can be completely ruined by an ending, and you don't even want to go back to it.
Yeah,
and I mean, there's recent examples in TV and literature as well.
Rest in peace, The Walking Dead comic for me. Just stop collecting altogether.
Yeah, so that's why it's important that authors and readers appreciate what makes a good and bad ending and differentiate, so that we can get more satisfying ending to stories.
Yeah, and stories that will stand the test of time, I think, because those are the ones that I think will be retold or you go back to, is the ones that not only had a good start, not only had a great journey, but also finished really well and pleasing. I mean, there's a lot of I was just thinking, there's television shows that will come out and, like a series will, or like a channel or whatever, whoever's sponsoring to make the show happen, lets them have one season. And they're like, well, this performed okay, we'll let you have a second season. And so they build up this story to be something cool, but then they're like, actually, for the third season, we're not going to let you do this, so we just want you to shit can it, or at least tie it up. And I hate the ones that decide, hey, instead of making somewhat of a cohesive ending to this that people can be satisfied with, we're going to leave this open-ended in case it gets picked up by another network, And it's always sad when something like that happens, but it happens all too frequently.
Yep. Many past shows have open endings that'll never
be satisfied. Yeah. Not all of them can get a decent movie finale like Firefly, but I will accept the ones that do. Anyway, guys, I think that'll end this concussion. What did I try to say? I don't even know. Did I say concussion? I'm having a stroke right now, so we better go.
Comment if you have some common threads that you have identified in endings that you don't like, whether it be in shows, video games, books, movies, etc., etc. And we'll be seeing you next time, probably doing the inverse of this, talking about what makes a good ending. Ooh. And we'll have a conversation there.
Like it.
Will that video be up a month from now? I don't know.
Possibly.
But anyway, later, addicts.
Peace.